Hi, I'm Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions, we all have so many transitions in our life. I like to use the metaphor of having a transition in a triathlon. And the first thing you do is you swim, and then you get to the transition area and you change and get on your bicycle and you bike. Then you get in the transition area again, and then you run or walk. It's all different, and it's a great metaphor for what happens to us in our life. We think we're going to start out doing one thing, and there in midlife we're doing another, and then it all changes. And we have an amazing person today. This is actually part 2, Virginia Harper. And she is a health counselor who has changed her life. And her life is, originally she was told that she probably wouldn't live till the age of 30, and all the doctors had given up on her. And now, and she wasn't going to have kids either, and now she has grandchildren. It's a pretty amazing story, and it's a healing story. So I want to welcome Virginia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to get an idea of, if you could tell our audience, what is it that you do as a health counselor?
Okay. I use food as therapy to help people get over autoimmune conditions, mainly. You can use food as a tool to keep inflammation down in the body, which is a trigger for diseases.
Okay. All right. And that food, we're going to call it macrobiotic.
Yes. Macrobiotic, meaning the word macro means big, full, whole, and biotics means bodily function. So essentially, you eat to create the best bodily function for yourself, period.
Okay. And then the background that you had, you were a very ill, and as a teenager, you had a stroke when you were 19. You had bowel disease.
Yeah, Crohn's disease.
Crohn's disease and a blood disease. And the doctors basically said, we've done everything we can do. That's it. And you changed your life yourself by just, I believe your dad had told you, why don't you try this?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, when he heard about it, it made sense to him. And since I was born and raised in Chile, I remember my grandmother going to the kitchen in the yard to get her remedies. So it kind of connected the more natural approach, more gentle, and it made sense to me about manipulating food since I was having Crohn's and I was having a hard time digesting food. So to put the focus on food just made sense to me at that time, and it worked.
So I know now you have, on your website, you have a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
People can, if they don't want to make the macrobiotic, they can actually purchase it and have it delivered.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a book on how to do this, right?
Yes.
You have workshops on how to do this.
Yes.
And people can actually live in your house
Yes.
by you, and you're going to cook, and they're going to learn how to cook it and do it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I realized that I needed to pass on this information, I knew it had to have a lot of education behind it. This is 35 years ago, okay? Wow. Nowadays, we have Google at our fingertips, and we have all this wonderful information on how to stay healthy. But it does get confusing for people because there's so much good out there. What do I need to take in for myself? So I kind of help the person find their health code with what they need to do. The macrobiotic food itself is just whole, unprocessed foods. And in our daily American life, we depend so much on fast food and processed food.
McDonald's.
Yes.
Yes.
We get intimidated by, what do I do? Spend so much time in the kitchen and cooking and all that with whole foods. And so even though I provide a meal program that would deliver twice a week, in cooking classes once a month and things like that. It's still about the education part of it because it is up to you to heal yourself.
Figure out what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
So I want to dig deeper, and to me, the macrobiotic thing, I always thought it was, well, you don't cook it. I want to know, let's kind of go through the food groups and what is macrobiotic? Is it just rice and peas, or let's go deep down and tell me.
Sure. Macrobiotic is everything that's not contaminated.
All right, and what's contaminated?
It could be with a lot of toxins, the way it's grown. It could be the highly processed methods they use to make foods easier for us to cook and prepare. It can be bringing foods in that don't really grow in this area, which is trying to grow, I don't know, pineapple, bananas in this.
I love pineapple, though. I just was in Hawaii.
It's not, and when you're in Hawaii, you enjoy it.
Yes.
But when you think of food beyond nutrition, okay, we all know where protein comes from and vitamin C and the greens and all that. But when you start thinking of food in an energetic fashion, it makes sense to put in things that are going to support your body living here right now. So when you're in Hawaii and it's hot and you need your blood to be thinner, you're going to have a lot of citrus fruits there to help you do that.
I had papaya, fresh papaya,
There you go.
and pineapple was delicious.
Yeah. But when you come back and it's a colder climate and your blood needs to be a little bit stronger to keep you warm, and so you're going to gravitate to eat stews and heavier dishes and you know, fats and things like that to stay warm, and you're eating citrus fruits that thin your blood, then guess what happens to your cholesterol? Your blood's not strong enough to clean the cholesterol on through because it's too thinned out. And so that's the food energetics part of it. That's just a small example, but that's what I help people decide upon. And so there's not a standard macrobiotic diet across the board.
Okay.
The only standard is avoid processed foods,
Okay, processed
avoid contaminated food,
Okay.
and eat locally. Eat what grows in your environment.
Okay. All right. So let's go further. So that means there's no meat.
That's not true.
No. Okay.
No.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. If you're a very active person, then you burn meat differently than the person that's sitting behind a computer.
Okay.
So we have switched to a very sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah.
So we don't need the amount of animal products that our forefathers needed to dig ditches and dig, you know, plantations for a house and things like that. We're storing that differently, and our body's having a harder time digesting it. So when you're in an emergency situation, then you take off all the stressors. So we remove animal products, which stresses the body and digestion.
Okay.
We remove all the processed foods and sugars for obvious reasons.
Okay.
And dairy is very hard to digest, so we remove all that to give the body the best chance possible by providing whole foods, live foods. And the body changes very quickly. Like I told you, in 3 days, I began to see a difference. If you want to add those things back in, you add them back in, but it's a different ratio, it's a different focus. It becomes a side dish, it becomes a condiment instead of a slab of meat on your plate.
Ah.
That's the difference. So you take the stress off the body in trying to deal with that food item.
Okay. So there you are, and yes, you can eat meat, but it's not when you first start getting on this diet.
Well, it depends what your situation is. So again, if you're in an emergency situation, well, you strip out everything that's going to stress the body. And so even caffeine, even, you know, things like that. and you eat very, what we call clean, very simple, natural foods.
Like what? Give me
Like vegetables. Vegetables, vegetables, vegetables.
Yes.
You can't get enough vegetables.
I eat a lot of broccoli and asparagus and cauliflower.
They not only cleanse the body, but they provide so much nutrition and hydration for the body.
Okay, but I like to put butter on it, and you say don't put butter on it.
I don't know. Can your body handle butter?
I think so.
Okay, then that's all you need to know. There's really no absolutes except for what you're dealing with.
Okay.
So your program is going to be a little different than mine and than Susan's. And we have some common denominators of stay away from sugar. Because if we all eat sugar, it's going to cause inflammation.
The pastry and the bagel, stay away from it, right? Right?
And processed foods, which the body has a hard time handling, okay? Because there's not enough life force energy in a processed food to keep you going.
So give me an example of processed foods.
A processed food would be anything, excuse me, in a box item.
Okay, box item, okay. So
Mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese, just stir it and then out of the box and there it is.
Anything you just add water to, put it on the stove, or now people put it in the microwave, but you know, anything that's in your mind quick cooking is probably not going to give you life force energy. It's going to give you some nutrition and maybe some fiber if you're lucky, but it's not going to give you life energy. And most of the conditions now, most of the people I get, their number one complaint is, I don't have energy. I don't have energy. And there's so much robbing our energy. We sit in front of the TV, we're on our cell phones all the time, or you know, we're in a city situation, no live trees around us, you know, the oxygen, all that, that we need to grab as much vital force energy from our fresh vegetables as possible. So that's one category.
Okay.
Now, before I move on from that category, there is a group of vegetables called the nightshades that grow mostly at night.
Tomatoes?
Tomatoes, potatoes, peppers on the main three top ones. There's a whole list. And those actually accumulate in your tissues and joints. There's an acid that they produce, salicylic acid. And when you eat them too much, especially raw, then they accumulate in tissues and joints and cause pain, and we call that arthritis usually. And so many people that have shown up with arthritis type pain, you know, I bring down some inflammation, I move them away from those group of vegetables and increase the other groups of vegetables that bring down inflammation, that coat the joints and lubricate joints and things like that. So moving from the vegetables, you have your protein products, which are beans are wonderful for the body with fats and proteins and everything it needs to thrive. And then you have your grain family, your whole grains. And
like what?
Like millet and quinoa and buckwheat and teff and amaranth and brown rice. I mean, so many that we just tip of the iceberg, you know, and we short-sight ourselves by just thinking we have to eat white rice when there's a variety of wonderful grains to eat, which are sustainable for the body.
Okay. So if somebody wants something like a cookie, all right, that is a no, right?
What kind of cookie? Which cookie? Not my cookies. You can eat my cookies all you want.
So there are ways to mimic, you know, I'm hearing you say, well, nothing with sugar, but cookies usually have sugar, but I guess there's a way to make a cookie without sugar.
Oh, yeah, there's wonderful sweeteners, you know, juices are wonderful sweeteners to add to things, and there's maple syrup and other sweeteners that, anything that's not tampered with, you know, your body's going to accept it in a different way. And so you're not mimicking food. What you're doing is eating real food. And so you learn, just like you learn to cook chicken 1,001 ways,
right?
You learn to cook vegetables, beans, grains, seeds, nuts. I mean, there's more variety in this type of cooking than I've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, you need your own TV show to demonstrate this. I mean, whoa. Yeah. Well, I want to move on too. We have another guest here, Susan Epperson, and she's kind of been your assistant and also has been she has had some issues that has really helped her you have really helped her with the issues. So that's a little introduction, Susan, to give us an idea of why you came to Virginia and how this process has helped you.
One of the things that came for me was that I was tired all the time. And that's what happened for years before I was diagnosed. After my first child, I was diagnosed with a liver disease.
With liver disease?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and in my mid-30s, and went into more of an integrative medicine and was introduced to Virginia. And as soon as we started and I committed to it, I didn't have my cookies. I didn't get to have my cookies. The word life-giving, it's true. I remember driving my son home from the zoo one day. It was 2 o'clock. And that is when usually we just are, you're exhausted. Yeah. At 2 to 3 o'clock window, I was full of life. And I remember I did not need caffeine. I did not need anything. It was truly from the foods that she had, because it's personalized, that she had, not created, but told me how to eat and what to eat. And so I've been with Virginia for quite a while, and then actually just the past year went to her lifestyle healing training at a residential program, and came in weary, and I had kind of gotten away after my second child from a macrobiotic eating completely. So I was needing more of a reset, if you will, and by the third day, I woke up and I felt better than I probably ever have in my entire life.
Whoa.
Yes, it's
whoa.
So it's amazing.
Give me an example of, okay, by the third day, what are you doing? What are you eating for 3 days? What is it?
One morning we had grits with MCT oil and sesame seeds on them, and we had for lunch red lentil crepes with azuki beans and collard greens and dandelions and dandelion leaves, and they were all delicious.
Was this cooked?
It was cooked. She cooked for me.
Oh.
And yeah, everything's cooked, and because cooking them in a certain way it's cooked and prepared is more life-giving. It allows your body to process it better.
Yeah, yeah.
So not much raw anything, because I know there's misconceptions probably out there about eating raw and things like that. But delicious, amazing. She is incredible. It's life-changing.
So like a dinner would be what?
Gosh, we had lentil loaf. We had, vegetable stir fries. You can use some tofu or tempeh, which are fermented soy products. We always had some type of ferment along with the food to help you digest. And when you're resetting or studying out just to heal, you want to give your body the best chance possible. And your digestion is the one that takes the beating no matter what you're diagnosed with. Your digester has to work properly.
Your digestion.
So we do make everything digestion friendly, and that means cook it down somewhat. Okay. In my case, it had to be cooked down to baby food. In her case, it could be regular food, just steamed or boiled or broken down a little bit. And once you start getting the strength and the absorption that your body needs to have, your energy rises right away because you're giving fuel to the body. And so raw is not out of the question. Raw is wonderful, and you have to chew it well, and the enzymes you get from it and everything else is very important. So we introduce that back, and it cools the body down. So raw for temperature-wise is more appropriate in spring and summer, because you gravitate to that. You gravitate to more raw fruits and vegetables and things like that.
What about if you want a glass of wine?
You can have a glass of wine.
Okay.
I always say, where are you with your situation? What's the quality, I mean, those are the two questions you should ask yourself when you eat. Where am I? What fuel does my body need? I can feel when I can't have a glass of wine. I can feel it. I'm not, and so I choose what foods to eat when. And but as long as it's good quality, that's where our focus really needs to go, because we've really gotten away and gotten lazy about quality.
Right. And then a question with you, Susan. You changed your eating, but you have 2 children and a husband.
Yes.
And they eat differently,
Yes, they do.
right? And have you tried to swing them into, hey, do this? And do they, no, I want my hot dog?
The 80-20 rule, I don't enforce the macrobiotics into their lives completely, although there are things I try to do, like the sweets, trying to bring in some macrobiotic things to allow them to have good quality foods, but also to have some indulgence as well. But they do eat the hot dog. Sometimes it's a work in progress. I would like to see them eat more macrobiotically, but we do eat dinner together, and a lot of times my husband is an amazing cook, and so he helps.
Right.
Yes, and so he helps to provide a meal that all of us can eat together, which is also a very important thing that Virginia talks about.
Eating together?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, this is a holistic view of how you metabolize life. And so, yes, we start with the food, because the food goes into our body and becomes us, becomes our fuel. But the emotional, spiritual part of this, like you in introduction, is a transition for all parts of you. And one thing I noticed in the years I've been teaching is the family unit getting more and more separated. I would work with a family and nobody ate at the same time, let alone sit around the table.
Right.
And that emotional component is so important to fuse families together. And so no matter what the person's dealing with, whether the parent comes in for a child that needs help, the first thing I ask is, what do you plan to do here? Because you can't isolate the child, and you have to eat together. So what can we find to create commonality? Will your family all eat brown rice?
Right.
Yes, they will. Okay, then that's the food item, then you all eat together. And then you do your little thing you need to do for you, and you can always add to it. But yeah, it becomes very important to still sit around the table and have dinner times.
Right, right. I like that idea. And you're right. Especially with children. I mean, and the older they get, they have this and that and this, and
Yeah.
how do they have together time?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
My kids always knew that dinner was dinner. And even if we had to switch the time a little bit because of a ball game, and we actually chose some things not to do because it would interrupt dinner time too much, So.
So at this point, you have so many areas that people can reach you on your website, and they can take a seminar, and they can buy your book. But why isn't this even more widespread? And also, I believe for 17 years, you've been on a ship that is vegan and macrobiotic, which I didn't know existed, and they do it every year.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So how, you have this microcosm, how, I think more people need to know about this, and not just in Nashville, but out there.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, we have a really strong community here in Nashville. I've been teaching here for over 38 years.
Wow.
And I had a clinic for a while in Franklin for about 5 years.
Wow.
And so it was way before its time. But now people have woken up, and Nashville has become a health conscious community. So there's more support here than you realize. But I think that's why my program's so based on education, no matter how you come to it. It is about self-care, and it's about self-responsibility of that self-care. So even if you had all the money in the world and hire the best cooks, it is about you taking the responsibility of cutting up a carrot, cooking it, and feeding it to yourself. Because that action heals you.
Okay.
That
The action of cutting up a carrot?
Yeah, of taking the consideration of preparing and feeding yourself. It's very much an emotional, spiritual thing that happens when you can touch the food you're going to eat.
Wow, well, I was cutting carrots and asparagus and broccoli last night, matter of fact.
There you are.
But I'd never thought about it as spiritual. But,
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, it's another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And
so it's very much a program of how to get people self-started, you know. You learn the basics, you learn what you need to do for yourself to get over symptoms, to feel better. And once you do, how do you sustain that?
And you've had people who have had cancer, and due to change in diet, did it disappear or quell down, or how did that work?
Yeah, the body always takes care of what shouldn't be there. To what extent is up to the person's lifestyle. And so, yeah, there's have been miraculous stories in my 38 years I've been doing this, you know. And I never turn anybody away when they said, have you ever tried work with this or that? I always say, let's see what your body will do.
Okay.
Because if you're willing to put the effort into it, your body's going to change. So I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to teach you how to do it, because that's true healing.
Right, and you have you can't do it for them at a certain point. That you can teach them, and then they go home, and you got to cook it.
Yeah,
you got to figure it out.
You have to step up.
Right, right.
And what's more important than having vitality in your life to carry out your dreams? And nothing tastes as good as health feels. So no matter what you try to give up, or what you're feeling sorry for yourself because I couldn't have this anymore, the health part of it and the vitality you live each day is so much bigger than that little piece of chocolate I'm going to have that's going to cause inflammation.
Right.
You know?
The vitality of your life, and it's body, mind, spirit. It's everything kind of rolled into one.
Yes.
And that is great. And I just wonder that I really feel that more people need to know about what you're doing. And I'm sorry that you don't have a clinic anymore, but I know that the more people that find out, and through our program, through everything, I think that will be a great.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Great idea.
Yeah.
And you'll have to come back next time with more testimonials like Susan, and saying, you know, that even with families, you know, people have so many excuses. And I guess losing weight might be another one too, to get vitality, lose weight. And I know that when I was just in Hawaii, 3 different households, they all had 3 radical different ways of eating, and I went, wow, maybe I should change too. But I want to thank both of you for being here. Stay tuned for the next show. There might be a 3rd. Stay tuned for that. And here we are, Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Thank you, Becky Meagher.